Sure. I mean, you're right that college campuses have become, increasingly toxic for Hindu students. DGH is one example. What you cited in terms of the intolerance for diversity of ideas. I mean, a college education really, the professor's role, in my view, and I'm not a professor, but I am the mother of a recent graduate and one, a junior in college, should be how to teach the future generation how to think, not what to think. And unfortunately, that's not what's happening, especially in South Asia studies. Um, you have scholarship that is a colonial framework that has lent to many of these entrenched false and negative stereotypes that don't really explore who we are as a people or our history or our contributions. And they just kept getting built on and built on and built on through the citation process and kind of inner circle of who controls access to journals and things like that. Worsening that is the scholar activism that you talked about. And that is that it's the thing that makes this a difficult issue is that the professors who are engaging in it are also of Indian origin or South Asian. And so for the average administrator, they don't recognize it. And so no matter how much you bring it up, it's very hard, very complex to explain these things. I've helped a couple of professors through the complaint process for filing for discrimination or hostile work environments. And it's very complex because you have people who are from the same national origin. But they're engaged in demonizing and targeting Hinduism and Hindu students. We see this through the dismantling global, that was one example, but also the Hindutva harassment field manual, things like Holi against Hindutva, where they are using a Hindu holiday to do a political protest. All of this is rooted in the scholar activist opposition to what's happening in India. And we become the collateral damage. And that's where it's a danger for subsequent generations, because they don't even care about Indian politics most of the time, but they get dragged into it.
Yeah, I will just add a few things here. What has happened in the universities and the whole ecosystem that is there, which is acting against us, is what we call a critical race theory, which has become the guiding principle for everybody who looks at this issue, which basically, in very short, believes that there are two categories, an oppressor class and oppressed class. And if you think in the context of American history, that makes sense. There was an oppressor class, which was the whites, and there were slaves, which were the blacks, which were the oppressed class. And it was a very serious oppression, very, very serious oppression, which lasted for hundreds of years. And it took very considered effort for that to be outlawed. And then even till 1960s, they did not have equal rights till Martin Luther King went into a civil engagement to give them some rights. And I think even to this date, they don't have it. Same thing can be said about religious oppression in Europe, which carried over from Europe to USA. So these protections are put into place for that, and they all lead to what we call oppressor and oppressed class. This theory has been deliberately and intentionally applied to Indian Hindu context, in which you have to create an oppressor class, which is the Brahmins. Now they call instead of using Brahmins, now they call upper caste. And anybody here in the US who has any position of recognition is upper caste. And then there's oppressor class, which they claim it has a difficulty coming here. And when they come here, they get mistreated. So this is basically a deliberate misapplication of a theory, which is very valid in the American context, but has no validity in our settings. But it has been applied, and that narrative is what basically is leading to the kind of the situation that Sunilji and Sohalji explained. But I think what is more dangerous in the university context, I hope I'm not going ahead of the question, but is that a vast majority of students, especially Hindu students, have bought this theory and they believe it is true. And especially those who do not come from families where these things were properly discussed at home. We did a workshop once on college orientation for college-bound students. we talked about these issues, but these are serious issues. And I don't think parents fully understand how this critical race theory translates into application to Hinduism, which our children are buying it. So I'll just start with one example, Sunil, and then we'll go further. I was the president of Indian Student Association at Carnegie Mellon when I was there. It was called Mayur. And it was a real fun thing we did. And at that time, it was only, I think about 150 or so students from India. I went to their website lately, I think a couple of years back, 3 years back. Now they have a Facebook page and they're very active, and vast majority of them are undergraduates, because at that time, they were only graduate students. Now, 90% of them are graduate students, undergraduates. And they had documents on how Hinduism is discriminatory, how to talk to your parents about discrimination, because your parents won't understand discrimination. It was almost a talking point manual, a toolkit as we call it, on how to convince your parents that they are racist, they are prejudiced, they're oppressor class, whatever you want to call it. It was very disturbing document. I shared that with some of the people who requested afterwards. But that's what it is. And unfortunately, the parents who send their children do not know much about critical race theory, where all this hatred for Hinduism is coming, or all these fault lines that are being created. And we need to be talking to the parents a little bit more about what they should know and what kind of conversation they should have with their children, so that they can talk, with some reason and some logic to counter these narratives that are being created.